Now, welcome back, everyone. We'll go on to item 8, which is the presentation on artificial intelligence. Jason, are you kicking that one off, or Gordon? Go ahead, Gordon.
Yes, thank you, members. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present and provide a short demonstration video of our first steps into using AI, in this case in the form of a chat box. I should add that I'm presenting this on behalf of Mark Robinson, the portfolio holder for customer and performance, who sends his apologies. The chatbot will provide another communication option for our residents and customers to engage with us, with the service being available 24/7. We're really clear and fully focused on ensuring we provide high quality and easy to use services that are designed with the resident consumer in mind. With this additional channel of communication, we're simply giving our residents another way to engage with us if they choose to do so. We believe that many will, which in turn will free up capacity and therefore improve operational efficiency in our traditional methods of engagement. I should now like to hand over to Adele, our Customer Experience Manager, and Rosie, our Digital Project Manager, and look forward to receiving any questions you have after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wait for the presentation, Ruth. Thank you. I have got it in front of me, so. Thank you, Ruth. So I'm going to present to you about Wrexham Council's 4-year AI project, phase 1, the chatbot online assistant. So Ruth, would you please move to slide 2? A quick update on our current position. During the early stages of our response to COVID-19 pandemic, we trialled a chatbot from Future AI, thanks to a referral from the LEP. The trial had just 56 questions and associated answers, and despite the known limitations of the pilot, we saw a reduction of live chat of around 25%, proving the potential of the chatbot functionality that it has in supporting our customers being residents, businesses, partners, and suppliers. Therefore, we submitted a business case and were successful in receiving an internal growth bid funding of 206,000 spread across 4 years. The first years of focus on the years of 1 and 2 were to develop an online chatbot with form and payment integrations. For year 3 and 4 to develop the telephony and omni-channel, and that's one view for one customer view, functions for our customers, but as we test and learn, understanding how our customers use the chatbot and other functionality, this may well change. Following the growth bid, a tender process was undertaken via the Crown Commercial Services new artificial intelligence dynamic purchasing system as our route to purchase the product. Ubisend, the winner of the tender, came out as the best fit across our scoring criteria. And to be honest, we're a surprise winner from the range of competitive bids, one of which was the Future AI. Since they won the tender, the level of engagement, collaboration, pace and development roadmap more than matches our ambitions. We look forward to putting our minimum viable product, our base offering, live to test in the coming weeks. They are also ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials certified and based in Norwich, with their Chief Technology Officer being based in Galveston. I'm going to hand you over to a demonstration video, which Rosie's going to share.
Hi, I'm Rosie Hill, Breckland's Digital Project Manager. I'm very excited today to give you a short demo of our chatbot, which is Breckland's first digital assistant. Now, this is still a work in progress, so there is more testing and training needed to be completed, but I can give you a quick overview of some of the functionality that's going to be available for our first release. So let's start by asking the chatbot question. First thing that you'll notice is that you need to accept and continue with our privacy policy before you ask a question. And you'll also be able to get a transcript of your conversation and export and delete your data. So first thing that we can do is select a service area. I'm going to go for bins and recycling. We have loaded around 260 FAQs into the chatbot, which are in a simple question and answer format, but the platform has the flexibility and potential to build on these and extend them in the future. By selecting a service area, it helps the chatbot to narrow down that FAQ pool and increase its accuracy and confidence in the answer that it provides. You'll also notice that we've added some frequently asked questions as well, or you can write any question text in here. I'm going to go for my bin is lost or damaged. You'll see that it then signposts you to the relevant page on the Breckland website. And we have a "was this helpful" question. Now we can use the answers to this and monitor it and use it to improve accuracy. It can help us to select which questions to develop further in the future as well. So I'm going to say yes, that was helpful. If there's something further that we can help with, then we move on to the customer satisfaction feedback. So overall, how did you feel about the service you received today? Now, ideally, everyone will be up this end, but we know in reality, some customers might not have enjoyed their experience today. So I'll give you the opportunity to give some feedback. Acknowledge that you didn't have a good experience. And what we're going to be doing is proactively contacting those customers where possible to find out how we can improve the service, develop it, make it better, and also give them the confidence to come back and give the chatbot another go once we've trained that further. So if I want to ask another question, we will also have the ability to answer live chat within the chatbot. I'm just going to ask a bit of a random question here. So if the chatbot doesn't understand, isn't confident in its answer, it'll have one attempt to get it right. If on the second attempt it doesn't, it will then automatically give you the option within office hours to speak to a live chat agent. You also have the ability to leave a message as well. I'm just going to briefly show you the builder. So in the background, this is where all the processes are built. If I go into live chat fallback, which we were just on a second ago, so where it can't identify what you're talking about. Option to speak to an agent, but if it's outside office hours, we will do some triaging questions around, is it an emergency scenario, in which case we direct you to the out of hours number. If it's within, if it's not an emergency, then we signpost you to our general inquiry forms to get some support, or to ask another question below. So that just gives you an example of the triaging and messaging processes that we can add, and that's a relatively simple one there. We also have a dashboard where we can have all the data, performance data and metrics loaded. So the FAQ data I spoke about, customer satisfaction data, top FAQs that have been triggered, the satisfaction surveys, live chat satisfaction surveys, all in here, loads of different stats, so that we can monitor and check the performance of the chatbot and ensure that we're moving towards our goals and our outcomes we want to achieve. Last thing that I just want to show you is how the chatbot appears on our website. So this is our test site at the moment, whereas our live chat at the moment only appears on selected pages. The chatbot itself will now appear on all of them. We do need to do a bit of work on how it looks and appears, but you'll be able to access that and start your conversations here. Lovely. So that's the end of the demo. Very quick run through of everything that we have. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, me and Adele will be happy to answer those. Thank you. Hi, I'm Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie. If you'd like to reshare the slides, Ruth, please, thanks. And we'll be on slide 4. Thank you. Slide 4. That's the one. Thank you. Thanks, Ruth. So phase 1, in October, we are scheduling to release, pending approval, to our live website, our baseline chatbot offering that can respond to 260 different questions covering a range of service areas. Functionality released will also include live chat enhancements, such as enabling customers to leave a message, a customer feedback loop, which is essential to support our continued development and will give us the opportunity to reach out to the customers via phone call or email to gain intelligence and understand our users' experience. As in the video, real-time performance metrics will be available and suitably monitored. The chatbot will be fully accessible to meet the new accessibility legislation. We are now 23rd out of 406 councils on the Silk Tide Index for our accessibility score. And we are proud of this, but there is still plenty to be done. Naturally, a full DPIA, data protection impact assessment, has been carried out and approved. We have tailored data retention periods within the platform. The customer can export and delete their own data. Within phase 2, we've already started the initial scoping and shaping activity on multiple form integrations between Ubisend and GOS, who is our web platform, along with the payment integrations with Capita. Phase 4, high-level discussions have happened with Foresight, our telephony Mitel provider, who have already begun to work with Ubisend on steps to enable our telephony chatbot. We're expecting to reduce telephone calls by 20% when we get to within phase 4. This is scratching the surface of the potential of AI. This flexible platform can offer an internal HR or ICT chatbots, for example, as well as wider 365 24/7 automation activity. I'd like to move on to the next slide, please, Ruth. Thank you. The outcomes, the benefits to our residents and customers, our portfolio holder, Mark Robinson, is continually driving us to ensure we provide high quality and easy to use services that are designed with customers in mind. This product enables us to give customers a more flexible way to engage with us. If customers wish, they can use the chatbot functionality to deal with routine inquiries, which will create capacity in the contact centre and other services to provide a more timely support for those that choose to engage with us using other methods. The chatbot will be available 24/7 to complement our website. The product will always be being developed as we learn from our customers, engage with it, so that we fully expect it will continually grow in content and functionality. Finally, live chat will remain available where customers choose to use it through our expectations. Though our expectations are that the functionality of the chatbot increases, we anticipate that live chat will dramatically decrease. Last slide, please. Thank you. Thank you. And any questions for us at all?
Tim, go ahead.
You'll remember when we first discussed this, there was some concern, no, there was considerable concern about the disclosure of personal information and how we were protecting that information. So from what I've seen today, I don't think it doesn't look like we're actually going along that route, that dangerous route that perhaps some people had worried about. Just on your demo, there was no user input name. You could just go straight to it. So how do you go back to the actual person? Because you said you might give them a call at the end. And I must say, just merely as a comment, it's the same technology, Chairman, as Dungeons and Dragons of the 1980s, isn't it? It's basically just word searching. It's an FAQ. Fantastic. I'm sure it's going to be able to reduce the actual contacts as an FAQ facility. It looks great. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to actually be beneficial. It's not really AI, not until you get up to stage 5 there, and that's perhaps where we might have some more concerns.
So with regards to contacting customers back, the flow wasn't followed all the way through. It does ask for contact details from the customer if they're happy to leave them. We're preferring a telephone call. So in an ideal world, we'd like to have a conversation with them to get real-time feedback and a two-way conversation going rather than ping-pong emails. You are right with regards to AI. When you think about AI, it's a really large databases that they're kind of scanning. But that is the potential of this product for the future, but we have to start somewhere. So this is where we're starting. Thank you.
Thank you. One from me then, which is, so when you have the customer who says they're not happy and then they say, yes, I'm happy to be contacted to provide feedback. Have you modeled at all how many customers you might have say that and how you'll manage that capacity within the contact team? And then my second question is if you could talk a little bit more about what phase 5 and 6 look like, because I noticed you were going to use Google or Amazon, I think. Is that layered on top of UBSend or is that a separate service? I wasn't clear.
So I firstly talk about the negative feedback. We currently don't get a lot of negative feedback and we anticipate that this will still remain the same way. So we are planning to manage that within our current web chat team. So we currently have 2 members of staff doing web chat at the moment, live web chat, but they also pick up emails, which have dramatically decreased with the change in the Serco contract. So we're expecting that it will sit within this team initially, and we'll continue to review it based on kind of the demand that's coming in. With regards to phase 5 and 6, we are looking, yes, to deploy it on Alexa and Google Home devices once we develop the telephony speech enabled side. So that is some work that we would need to scope out after we've developed the telephony chatbot. And then again, with the ability to book the appointments, that is something again that we would add on to the telephony side of the chatbot. So at the moment we have a booking system online where customers can book an appointment to come in and see us. It would be integrating the telephony chatbot that we build up with that appointment booking system. So that's still some work to be scoped out in the future.
So for the completely uninitiated, because I don't have an Alexa or whatever the other one's called, Google Home, thank you. Could I say to Alexa, please call Breckland or book an appointment with Breckland? And that's sort of amazing and frightening at the same time. Okay, right, fine. Robert, and does anyone else want to ask anything at the moment? And Roger? Okay, Robert, then Roger.
Do you see stage 7 as creating a scrutiny bot?
I think we see stage 7 as to where we'd like the services, again, I think, to engage. That's where we'd like this to go further than customer. That's where I think the future is, and across the council. So potentially a scrutiny chatbot.
Yeah, I think it's great. We obviously need to get into the 21st century, and this is a good start. My plea is, and I'm looking for an assurance from you, that we're not going to lose sight of the fact that a great many of our residents still only want to use the telephone, and they want to speak to a person. Because I know I've written to Rob this week about some issues that have been raised at my various parish council meetings I've been going to in my ward. I think we shouldn't lose sight of that, and the fact that there is still an awful lot of people out there that just can't use a computer, don't have that level of knowledge, don't have a mobile device. They literally just have the telephone in their house, and that is their connection with the outside world. So can you assure me that we are still going to be maintaining and always striving to improve the telephone service so we can speak to a human as well?
I can reassure you, so the customer will be given the choice. If a customer chooses to use the telephony chatbot, because like you say, some customers, they might not necessarily be comfortable online on the internet, but they might be comfortable having a conversation over the telephone with a digital assistant chatbot, or they might not and still want to speak to a real person. That option will remain available, and we'll still be developing our telephony services and processes within the contact centre.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, it should help. So people that do want to use it 24/7, they come home from a shift on the weekend or late at night or early hours of the morning, they might be able to get the answer they need and stop calls coming in. So when people that do want to use those traditional methods, for example, calling, it frees up that capacity and we can get to people quicker, reducing wait times, etc. So that's the hope of this. And from the initial trial with Future AI last summer, we certainly saw some impacts. It was a very unique scenario because call volumes were actually quite low during the pandemic for various reasons, but we've done some initial modeling which helps that. And the end game here is actually we could be more outbound and understand our customers and support the vulnerable people out there, the young carers, etc. So we create that capacity to change our model and what we look like in the long term.
Thank you. Well, I'm of the demographic that probably would not like this, or it's often indicated that we wouldn't like this. I have to say, I think this is fantastic. It's not my portfolio. I rather wish it was, because I can see exciting times in the future through this. We at Breckland, 23rd in the list of councils complimented for their the way they deal with customers. Well, we want to be number 1. We don't want to be number 23. We don't want to be in the first 10. We want to be number 1. So that's my challenge to you. Security, yes, of course there are security issues. There are with everything, but most of us will bank online. Most of us will deal with the taxman online. Most of us will do all sorts of private stuff online, even order a McDonald's, I think you can these days online. It's something we're all using, and I think as time goes on, we will do it. The impetus in Breckland is certainly that we're not going to abandon anybody. Of course, the telephones will still be manned. That's the sort of 9 to 5 services of the council, if you like. So that's going to continue. And this, as Jason has just said, will be helped by the fact that many people who just want to know a simple question, they want to get it answered. They're not going to phone in. They're not going to clog up the contact center because they've got a simple query on their council tax or whatever. That's going to be dealt with by pushing a button. And I really, really do hope that we go on so many, many more parts of this council's business can be done in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any, Tim?
There we go. I'm just slightly concerned that we're comparing ourselves with HMRC, with their very high secure systems, their two-factor authentication. We're not in that arena. I don't think we should be making that comparison. Look, it's great news, and this looks like a good way forward. But please, can I suggest that we actually have some further feedback on this as you learn more, especially around these later points, ahead of them actually being deployed, well ahead, so that we can consider those security arrangements and any problems that might, we can anticipate any problems.
Completely agree. And I think probably once you've got the initial deployment in October out, maybe we look at this in February or March next year, once you've got a decent amount of data to see how things are going and so on. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I might have missed it. Is it up and running now?
No, it's not currently up and running. It's planned for deployment in early October, sorry, end of October. So we're coming to you with it at the moment to let you know that it's going to be going out there. And that's what I would expect with each new channel or new kind of feature, big feature that's made available, like Google Home, Alexa, telephony.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I've been dealing with a deaf resident recently, and I'm having to find online addresses for her because she can't ring. So this would be ideal for our deaf residents across the district.
Go ahead, Linda.
Just quickly, Chairman, as Chairman of the Member Development Panel, we'll make sure that we liaise with the departments for member training going forward.
Very good. I don't think there's a particular recommendation on this, so we note the presentation. Thank you very much, and it all sounds jolly good. Look forward to it being rolled out next month. In which case we'll move on to item 9, which is section 106. Simon, are you kicking that off for us? Yeah.
Must remember to do that. I've just done a sheet which hopefully Teresa or Ruth could just put up on the screen, just with the key points from the report. It's okay. No, I didn't email over to it this morning. It's nowhere near as glossy as the AI presentation.
You haven't done a little video of yourself presenting?
No, I wouldn't dare. Do it in the medium of dance. So, yeah, thank you very much. Just a single sheet, really, just as much an aid memoir to myself as also just to enable you to see the key points that I wanted to pull out from the report that you've had in front of you and have had an opportunity to read. As most of you will know, legal obligations are planning tools that are entered into to mitigate the impact of a development proposal. They can't address existing issues. They can only deal with issues raised by the impact of a development. The process is managed by the planning service, and we work with other service areas within the council to monitor, to spend and ensure obligations are complied with. And we've been doing a piece of work over the last 12 to 18 months. There's been a bit hit and miss because of the COVID issues, being able to drag people away from dealing with those, to ensure that we're all aware of what our roles are within the Section 106 process in terms of monitoring, in terms of enforcement, and how we work in particular with the affordable housing team and the legal and finance team to ensure that we get obligations in on time and that they're able to work with us to ensure that if there are breaches of obligations, that we're able to understand what those are, the impact of them, and deal with them. And we have a couple of cases going on at the moment where we are working with affordable housing to seek to enter into mediation to resolve issues around the provision of affordable housing and off-site contributions. I think it's important to note that developers can apply to various Section 106 agreement. It can only be within 5 years of the agreement being signed if it's with the agreement of the local authority. But after that, it's open for them to apply at any time. There's various reasons why they may seek to vary a condition. Viability is the key one, and as set out in the report, we have a viability assessor who we use to challenge the assessments put forward. We used to use the district valuer. We've now moved to an independent viability assessor who works primarily, if not solely, with local authorities. And we found that over time, we're a lot more challenging and able to be a lot more challenging than we have been historically. And variations do get challenged and do get refused on occasion. If planning obligations are breached, then it's open to the council to take formal action against developers. As with all forms of enforcement, that formal action is often a last resort, and we seek to enter into negotiation. But as I say, at the moment, we are about to go into mediation with one developer to try and resolve an issue. So there are various tools open to us. We do have an annual infrastructure funding statement on the website. This is a new requirement that was brought in last year and works on a financial year. And it requires us to give details of any infrastructure that's to be provided, the development it relates to, and any trigger points that there may be for contributions. It's on the Section 106 page of the planning website. And I think the link is within your report, but if you're struggling to find it, then give me a shout. And in terms of the future, the Planning for the Future white paper, August last year, set out a proposal to replace the community infrastructure levy and Section 106 agreements with a nationally set value-based flat rate charge to be known as the infrastructure levy. And to be honest, that's all we know about it at the moment. There's very little further information in respect of that. And I think the challenge will be making sure that councils, local planning authorities are able to still use developers' contributions in some form to mitigate development, to try and front load infrastructure improvements to enable development to come forward. But that, I think, will all come out in the wash, as they say. So thank you, Chairman, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Roger, then Tim. Yeah, sorry, Robert. And Roger and Tim.
Presumably officers have sort of a checklist of trigger points, etc., depending on size of scheme, etc., as to for instance, open space, play areas, etc. And that hierarchy ultimately reduces the viability of some social housing schemes. Is there a value judgment in which of those were applied, or is it an automatic process where each and every one of those potential obligations is assessed?
When we're dealing with a planning application, there will be several requirements very often in terms of mitigation. We'll look at the need for open space provision. We'll look at the need for affordable housing, and they tend to be the two that are required the most. All of those will have triggers, and we will monitor when those should be applied, when the triggers are hit. And we're now in a position where we're able to write to developers and remind them that the triggers are coming up. If developers have problems with meeting those triggers for whatever reason, then they're more than welcome to come and discuss it with us, and we can see whether there is a route we can go down that will enable us to bring the development forward with the minimal impact on the mitigation that's required. Very often during the course of an application, developers have finite pots in terms of the contributions that they're able to make. And we have to, again, make planning judgments about how we prioritize the different infrastructure requirements for each development. And that's something that would be determined by planning officers, along with service providers such as affordable housing, or in the case of county education, libraries, etc. And we will then present that to members to enable them to make a decision based on our recommendations. So hopefully that answers the point.
All right, okay, sorry. Yeah, so just follow on from what Robert was saying. First of all, I want to say you've come an awful long way with the Section 106 monitoring the systems in the last 3 years. I gave your predecessor a very hard time, which I know is really hard to believe from me, about the monitoring and implementation of Section 106s. And since you've come in, Simon, you have done a really good job on sort of improving the service. I want to pay tribute to Charlotte Brennan, the Section 106 officer. I find her very efficient and she's got a finger on the pulse. So that's all positive. I think the one thing where the system does fall down a little bit still is if the Section 106 agreement is signed and there are trigger points in there. So there are certain actions that need to happen on that development before the developer is supposed to do something else. And in terms of the money, it could be the open space has got to be open and available on sort of 30% occupancy. And I still worry that as a council, we don't proactively monitor that. We're still relying on quite a lot of goodwill from the developers. So I think I'm just wondering what your views would be on what we could do to improve that as another improvement to the system. And also just a slight tangent here, Chairman, but indulge me. The Section 106 is important, but I've just asked Simon if it would be possible to do just a little bit of piece of work to make all members aware of sections 278 and section 38 legal agreements that would affect their communities. That tends to be something that the county council deals with. But if you're a lighting authority, if your community, parish or town is the lighting authority, then you certainly will be, should be a signatory to that agreement if you're going to take on the street lighting responsibilities, etc. I've done quite a bit of work on that this year, and I've learned a lot. And I've learned that with the help of the county council officers, that there is the ability to extract further significant funding from developers because they should be providing monies for future maintenance, etc. of the street lighting. That doesn't get picked up in the Section 106. That's not a specific function of your department, but I think from an educational point of view for members, it also affects things like about the adoption of roads and footpaths and when should they all be tied in and completed and adopted, etc. That would be another piece of work that I think members might appreciate. It doesn't need to be, war and peace, but I think just as an educational tool would be really useful. If you want me to help you with that, I'm quite happy to feed in. But I said, it's that for me, the question coming back to the 106 is the monitoring. What do we do to proactively monitor that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pass your kind words on to Charlotte, who unfortunately has not been very well the last few weeks. So hopefully that will that will cheer her up. I would agree with you. I think the system has come a long way in the last 3 years. That's down to the work that Charlotte's done and also support she's had from Nicky Fonseca at Burkitt as well. So we need to put credit where credit's due in respect of that. In terms of monitoring obligations, we're in a much better position now for the system to tell us when obligations are due and to tell us what those triggers are, and we seek to advise developers that these trigger points are coming up. Historically, that's not something that we've done, as you're well aware. And one of the issues we've had in bringing all the systems up to date, getting all the files on record, is that we are doing a little bit of chasing our tail as well with older Section 106s, where we know the triggers have gone and we're now trying to find out if they've been complied with or not. And that can sometimes be challenging, but we're seeking to do that. But in answer to your question, we're now able to actually monitor those obligations and advise developers of trigger points. So that's what we're doing. In terms of Section 278 and Section 38, they're from the Highways Act, obviously, as you know. I think it's 1980, but I could be wrong. Yeah, they're to do with the technical aspects of development in relation to roads, to drainage of roads, to street lighting, etc. And we wouldn't normally get involved in those. As part of the planning process, we can't insist that roads are adopted. It's down to an individual developer as to how they want to manage the road network within their development. And the highways department at county will work with them, get the bonds in place, get the maintenance contracts in place, etc. But I think it probably would be useful. I think I'm in agreement with you. Just a very short note for members so that we can clarify the differences and understand what each authority does. I'm quite happy to pick your brains and also my colleagues at the county as well. So I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Simon. I think members would really welcome a bit on those two sections as well. I have to say I'm terribly ignorant about those, so it'd be nice to change that. Tim and then Linda.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Sort of following on a little bit, Simon, from what you were saying about chasing the tail of old trigger points. So if Breckland makes a mistake, as has happened in a few places in the past, I'm specifically thinking of Say and Tony here, who've lost out on £40,000 worth of play equipment. What actions can we take? And if we can't actually pursue and recover anything from payments that should have been made, should Breckland really try and put the parish council back in a position where it would have been had the money been collected? And the second point, which is about discussion of the Section 106 agreements ahead of time. There's a lot of sort of pre-application discussion, and that doesn't necessarily include things like parish councils who might want to have an input at that stage. And by the time you get to a planning application, this is all done and dusted. Section 106 agreements are all pretty much ready to be signed off at that stage. But it doesn't give an opportunity for either parish councils or members of the public to actually have their say. So can we look at ways in which we can improve the engagement?
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the first point, where we collect monies in relation to development, it normally has to be spent within a specific time, utilised within a specific time, which is generally 5 years, or the money has to be returned. In terms of the same Tony monies, I'm not totally familiar with that, so I couldn't really give any comments on that. In terms of pre-application, officers often have pre-application on major developments and large developments, and Section 106 heads of terms are often part of that. In terms of the input of parish and town councils, we consult parish and town councils on applications. We don't often get involved in pre-app, but we do often encourage developers to go and speak to parish and town councils. Whether they take it up or not is at their discretion. I think the general point I would make is that in terms of section 106 agreements, they have to be based on the 3 SIL test. They have to be necessary, they have to be relevant, they have to be proportionate, etc., etc. And I think it's important that where parish and town councils want or require infrastructure within their settlement to support development, they need to be able to demonstrate to us and to a developer that they've thoroughly thought this through, that they can demonstrate that if you're going to develop a dozen houses or whatever in a village, that the village requires X, Y, and Z, and we've costed this out, and we can work with you then to ensure that that's included within the section 106 agreement. I'm not going to sit here and say there's not more work to be done in terms of how we engage with parish and town councils, but it is something that we're looking at the moment. It's sort of the next tranche of work, really.
Thanks. Roger, did you have a point on that?
Yes, it did. I agree with everything Simon just said. I do think, however, that there needs to be more focus from the parishes and the towns, if I'm honest. They need to step up, ask more questions at very early stage. If they get a whiff that there's a development coming in their town or parish, and some of us are better at that than others, but they need to ask those questions. They can certainly engage with the officers, and they can certainly comment on aspects of the 106 when they submit their comments on an application. And I think on most applications, on the heads of terms are on the officers' report if it comes to committee. So I think you're right, there is more work that needs to be done, probably educating parishes, and it might be, and I would look to Rob here, it might be something that we want to do as part of a parish forum when that, you know, in the post-COVID era, to get that up and running so that we can have that engagement. And basically we need to be advising and working with the parishes and telling them what they need to do to help themselves, really. If that's possible.
No, I would agree with that, and I think it is a good area of training for parish and town councils. But I think there's also work for us to do as well in getting the evidence base on a district level to be able to feed into that.
Thank you. I've got Linda, then David.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not often I agree with 2 members of the opposition, but absolutely do. And you're absolutely right, Roger. There is an onus on the parish and town councils to take more responsibility and to do a bit of chasing of their own. One of the issues we found at Shipdham was sometimes through the section 106 officer, only a couple of councillors would be asked for a comment on something. And I think the whole parish council should be asked. We're involved with planning as a whole council, whether you've got a planning committee within it or not, but it's a decision of the whole council to comment on planning applications. So I think the whole parish council should be involved throughout. And what we've been doing for a long time, in fact, we started it when I was on Durham Town Council, was right at the very beginning, you invite the developers in and you sit and start negotiating then and saying, okay, yeah, we quite like that, but what if, how about if you do this for us? And then we put it in as part of the comments. So you're absolutely right, that we've got to be involved right from the very beginning, because then that'll help Simon and his team and the developers. And, you know, very often it's, you come out with a better of a win-win situation.
And David.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask Simon with regards to an email conversation we had recently with regards to the relative merits of SIL as opposed to 106. But as you quite rightly say, the white paper, which we don't know what's going to come out of that, rather negates that particular question. But coming back to the debate that we just had, is it not the case that if indeed there are issues which are difficult to resolve with the 106 agreement, the 5-year period can be extended at the request of the parish council or the town council? And I specific before your time, Swaffham, we had, when I was on town council at Swaffham, we had a huge battle with Tesco's. The Tesco development was an absolute nightmare as far as 106 money was concerned. And I think we had 2 extensions on the 5-year period to get the money that we were due to get, because the developer was actually arguing, even at that late stage, that the money that we had asked for and clearly defined in the agreement was not mitigating the impact of Tesco's development. And I think we got 2 extensions and eventually we got the money, but it can be extended, can it not? Is that still the case? Sorry.
Yes, it can be extended, but it has to be with the developer's agreement. So we can't unilaterally extend it. It has to be by discussion. And I think that the Tesco one at Swaffham, which I was involved with, along with John Berry before he left, and we managed to get a resolution on that, is a key example of that, where the developer wanted to work with us, albeit not always constructively, but generally the developer worked with us very well on that to overcome some difficult legal issues. And yes, they were happy to agree an extension.
I don't have anyone else wanting to comment. Simon, do you have any final words of wisdom for us? In which case, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you members for the questions. We'll go on to the next. I don't think we have an actual recommendation there. We just note, yeah, again, we're noting the contents of the report. So if we could go on to item 10 then, which I think is going to be the Gordon and Jason show. Gordon, are you kicking this one off for us? I've got some emphatic nods from Jason, so I hope so.
I thought I wouldn't put the mic on and you wouldn't hear me waffle. Thank you. So I am presenting again on behalf of Mark Robinson, who sends his apologies. To quickly recap the situation, earlier this year, the decision was taken to review and reposition the Council's performance framework as a result of the end of our strategic partnership with South Holland. This framework is intended to help shape the Council's approach to performance, how it wishes to construct and manage its performance moving forward. In creating this new framework, attention has been paid to ensuring there is a sound theoretical underpinning to the new framework to ensure that the clearest picture of the Council's performance is able to be presented. The framework seeks to tie together the various different performance elements of the Council, such as committee system, into one single document. Furthermore, the document sets out what criteria the Council applies to different types of information, such as statistics and KPIs. By doing this, we hope to ensure that all stakeholders have a clear understanding of how the Council will carry out performance management at different levels moving forward. Councillor Robinson has also asked me to reference the Kpi Review Activity, which is going on and is incorporating feedback from the last session of this Commission in relation to the review. We are aiming to bring a report related to the new suite of indicators before the overview and scrutiny in October, and this session will therefore see both the new indicators for agreement, the current suite of indicators as part of the Q2 performance report. It is agreed then that the new indicators will be recorded from Q3 onwards, with the committee seeing these in the Q3 report, which is to be brought to you in January 2022. I would now like to hand over to Jason for a quick summary of the framework, which was included in the meeting pack and made available to you all last week. We look forward to receiving comments and questions, of course.
Thanks, Gordon. Just really quickly, conscious of time, that everyone's had an opportunity to review the pack anyway. First of all, apologies, it's quite a dry read and it actually doesn't follow the corporate documentation anyway, so it is a draft document. I look forward to feedback. With it being dry, I'll commit to actually pulling a exec summary together, which I think would be useful, not just for officers, but for members going forward. So apologies, there's no exec summary at the moment. And finally, it's not a particularly accessible document, and before it would go live, will be published onto our intranet as per our really strong positioning nationally at the moment. We would make sure that document is accessible, specifically around the tables, etc. in there. And then finally, it's that KPI review that will really bring this to life. This is kind of the umbrella document that sits over the organisation. It will be the corporate plan and how we deliver against those 4 corporate strategic themes, and then the KPIs, stats and data that sit underneath it and underpin it, which will really bring the performance framework to life that Overview and Scrutiny would like to get stuck into in various detail over the coming weeks, months and years, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. On the paper, the recommendation is to agree to the adoption, but I think we would be recommending to Cabinet as a non-decision-making body. And I think the proof of the pudding will be in the actual KPIs and our monitoring, both by this commission and audit and governance. But that, you know, the meat will be in the detail. Thank you.
Yes, I think you, Jason, you picked up on my first comment there. It's a bit like wading through treacle, this one. It's a popular American corporate concept from about 20 years ago, that Kaplan and Norton Balance Scorecard. The report has the feel for a particular type of marketing, and I'm just, that led me to ask the question, have we signed up to some third-party performance management plan, or are we engaging with a company like IntraFocus, because that kind of is their feel? So it's just you know, general inquiry as to where this came from. Can I come into some detail? And on page 36, the Balance Scorecard. I mean, there's been a lot of academic criticism of the empirical nature and arbitrary designation in the 4 perspective areas of this. And the original Balance Scorecard, which is what you're showing on this page, I think there've been some revisions subsequently, but the original one, which is what you're showing here, was heavily criticised for being biased towards finance. Now, that's not to say that finance isn't important, it's crucially important, but it was the amount of bias that was put in because it was designed for American corporations originally. And I'm not necessarily sure that that fits so well within what the services that the council provides, especially since many of our service provision is a statutory requirement. Now, there are other performance management frameworks. I mean, the one that I'm drawn to is the results-based management, and that's often used by governments, you know, which sort of fits within what we're doing here. And it would be, one of the reasons for using that one is it's specifically less biased towards finance. And it would be very useful to see a comparison of other frameworks so that we know which one we're, you know, why we are choosing this one over the others. Now, I think you've probably already been picked out. We don't actually have any details of the scorecard perspectives, the goals, the measures. So it's very difficult to agree that this is the right way to go at this moment. I've got a final real red flag to me on this, in that we've completely missed out our strategic carbon reduction environment requirements. You know, if we're going along this route, this should be a scorecard in its own right, and there's no reason why you have to have 4. I mean, nearly everybody does, but there are a decent number of examples where people have more than 4 scorecards, if that is the chosen route in which we're going to follow. On this, just a little comment really here. On page 39, you mentioned that these powers are enshrined in the council constitution. And I can say it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference whether they were in the constitution or not, because actually they're enshrined in the law. So to heck with the constitution on this occasion. Look, I've got another question, but it's slightly more general and more technical. So perhaps go with this to start with.
So to distill, Tim doesn't like the framework that much. What other frameworks were considered? I think the question is there any third-party influence that made us arrive at this particular framework designation, and were alternatives considered? And if you answer that, then I think that'll hit a lot of Tim's point.
No and yes. But just slightly broader, we worked with the LGA, we used their best practice documents, and we worked with internal and external audit to come up with what we believe to be the best practice and most suitable performance framework for our organisation. Now, if you've got other recommendations, then please do send them over to me and we'll feed it in and make sure that we did do that as part of our due diligence and reconciliation. So, you know, we're never a closed shop. We're always learning all the time. So please send it over. But I'm confident that given the amount of activity we've done in research, that this was suitable, which is why it's been brought forward now.
And the other challenge I think I'll levy from Tim was, so the carbon target and carbon neutrality, how do you see that fitting inside the framework?
So that's absolutely key and is embedded in our KPIs, and you'll see that when that comes through in October over in Scrutiny.
Got it. Tim, I'll allow you one brief comeback and then I'm going to go to Terry.
I've got a different question. Perhaps we go to Terry first.
Terry, go ahead.
Thank you. You win a prize, Jason, for it being the least thrilling document I've read in a few weeks, but it is quite key. Just two observations, really. I don't know if they're helpful or not. Reading the report, it sort of struck me that one of the issues with performance management is you're very much looking about what's already happened. And ideally, we want to get into a position where actually we stop the poor performance happening in the first place, to sort of almost use the framework to look ahead and sort of arm ourselves with the knowledge that actually performance may be slipping in the future because of whatever reason. So for me, the sort of looking ahead is more important than looking behind. And I just got the sense from reading the document, it was about what's gone on in the past, which of course informs the future, I know, but it was just an observation. The second point is there's a couple of sort of trigger points sort of mentioned where we do the annual report, we do the quarterly update to Cabinet or Scrutiny, but what I would be more reassured with is if something was performing particularly poorly very quickly, something may happen and the performance suddenly goes down. To what extent do we then wait for the next performance update, or do we automatically say to Cabinet or say to Scrutiny, this has happened in the last couple of weeks, and it needs to be much more sort of reactive to the issues that are happening and not just wait for the quarter because it happens to be the quarter, more timely, I suppose, is what I'm saying. But those were the only observations I got from it.
Thanks, Terry. You're absolutely right. So trends can influence and inform us what's going to happen going forwards, and we're always looking at that in terms of that forecasting, whether it's financial or performance. And we also do a lot of work, and that's led by Max and Rob, around what high performance looks like, and it's the behaviours of individuals first, and sometimes it's hard to get hold of those less quantitative, but those qualitative information around how our officers work to drive that high performance culture, which actually we then start to see come through in stats. So it's something we do through our kind of HR team and through our managing process. In terms of trigger points, absolutely we don't wait for a quarter 3 performance report to land to look back and go, oh, we should have done something then. Reviewing stats and data all the time. We have weekly CMT meetings, for example, and we'll review data. We've got a governance structure in place. And if we identify an issue, whether it's a member identified issue or whether it's an officer identified issue from the data we review or conversations that happen, then we'll be as proactive as possible. Quite often that is reactive. If we spotted it as reactive, but we do use that forecasting to be as proactive as possible to identify those trends to stop it happening.
Okay, so this is a bit more general, slightly techie. Page 33, section 4. We usually, if not always, measure in a mathematical way. Absolutely fair enough. That's what this is about, in effect. But there's an issue that's been bugging me for a while, and that's, on our process. So we identify a problem, we implement a solution, and we see an improvement. But how do we avoid the problem of regression to the mean, giving us a false sense of success?
Are there any specifics you'd like to talk about? Because each project and each delivery will be very different.
I think I understood it, and I think I've got an example of how you can do this. It actually refers to a time at South Holland, so it's a bit of a leap. But there was a narrative going around South Holland about how planning performance had deteriorated this year and how it was struggling. And it was because they'd taken a particular lens on what would happen the year before in income and then the next year. But if you looked at a 10-year history, actually the performance in that year was above average, but because they'd only looked back 1 year, it was seen as poor performing. So sometimes it depends on the lens and context you sit information and data within to truly get the rich picture. And I don't think I'm understanding about it. I'm referring to the point he's making by the way you look at it. I think our approach is, my challenge is to our performance team is to tell me something I don't know, because that's when I truly know they're adding value. Don't repeat back to me what my service managers have told you. Look in a broader context and bring it all together. Don't be dogmatic about one system. Yeah, be guided by one system, but we're not disciples just of one system. Do what's appropriate to our organisation. The reason Jason wants the call centre to be calling out is so we can be proactive rather than reactive, as Councillor Jermy's mentioned. So I think we're on a bit of a journey with our performance culture, and we not want to get away from collecting data just for the sake of collecting data to actually make. I'm acutely aware at times that I'm making decisions based on my gut and my experience of Brecon, which sometimes is right, sometimes occasionally I get it wrong. I want to be evidence-driven and performance-driven in everything that I make. So it's not based on solely reliant on a person who's been here 10 or 15 years or, such like. It's driven truly by data. So I think hopefully you'll see when the stuff comes forward in October that the sort of KPIs back this up. It will be complemented by a program office that looks at projects and performance and not just the numbers stuff. Because, for example, on green grants, we're going out £100,000 of green grants. Well, actually, we want to see what the outcomes of the projects we funded through the green grants system are, not the level of spend per se. So this is one piece of a bigger jigsaw. This is just the first step. And I haven't got a clue, Chairman, if I've answered the question, but there's a good start. Yeah, well, that's the trick there.
Were you convinced, Tim?
Well, no, I don't think you've actually answered the question, but I'll tell you one of the things you did do is you did give a pretty good rationale for why we should be using results-based management. Look, as things stand at the moment, we're being asked to do something, adopt this draft performance framework. And I'm afraid I'm really struggling with this because I don't think we have considered enough. It's not put in a way which we know what we're adopting. It's kind of adopting, oh yeah, let's agree to a blank sheet of paper. So I'm concerned at the moment.
Tim, what we will do is we will go to a vote on the item, and then we can all make our individual views on whether or not to use the performance framework clear. I'll stop debate at that point then. As Robert has rightly pointed out, we aren't adopting the draft performance framework. We are recommending to Cabinet that they do so. So on that basis, could I see all those members in favour of recommending to Cabinet that they do adopt this draft performance framework? Please show your hands. And all those against, and all those abstaining. That is carried, so this meeting is making that recommendation. We will, of course, see the KPIs when they arrive, and if it turns out that there need to be tweaks, then I'm sure that this committee will be the first one to get into the detail and say what we'd like changed. So I hope that this is an ongoing process rather than a one-off decision. Right, that was the last substantive item, which takes us, I heard that, Linda. So item 11 is outside body feedback. I saw Robert has circulated the HOSC feedback already. Robert, was there anything you wanted to add to that? No, that's
No, that's the main reason for sending it now to.
very good. Thank you. Are there any other members who want to bring outside body feedback to the attention of the committee? Seeing none. Excellent, thank you. There are no scrutiny call-ins presently, and there are also no councillor call for actions presently, which takes us on to the work programme. You've all seen the work programme. I suppose the two things that were raised in this meeting is one, actually three things. One, we should pencil in a future date, say in March, April time, depending on when the AI goes live, for us to have a look at how that's going and what sort of data they've got so far. So if you could add that in, Ruth. The second is we should probably bring back Serco, and I'd have thought earlier than a year. I think I'm going to put that on the TBC, and then we'll be guided by officers as to how performance is looking as well. And then the third item was Roger suggested whether this meeting might consider convening a working group to look at some of the issues that Serco have had in the contract, particularly around grass cutting and litter picking and so on, as we've already discussed at some length. Are members keen on that idea? Would people like to join a working group? Yeah, in which case we'll put arrangements in place at the next meeting to set up a working group. I think we'll probably go for either 4 or 5 members. It's probably about big enough, and take soundings from who's keen. But if you could email me afterwards if you're particularly motivated to be on there, and we could go from there. Are there any other items that people would like on the work programme? Robert, then David.
Chairman, I think we're still awaiting the promised lists and feedback from Flagship Housing, where members were to be provided with lists of properties, etc.
I can confirm that that was sent out to all members, but just to be aware, it might not be under the heading of Flagship, because Flagship is the group. There's Samfire Housing, I believe, Samfire, and yeah, so just so you know.
Well, if Teresa, you might make sure that Robert has his copy, but that's ticked off the list. David.
Oops. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wondered for next month, we have a report from Greg Pearson on electric charging points. Is this an opportunity to expand that particular item on the agenda? The Climate Change Project Officer has now been in post for 6 months, 7 months, something like that, I think, for a brief update on the climate change emergency programme, because the electric charging points is only part of that. And it probably would take 5 minutes to tell us how many electric charging points there are, et cetera, et cetera. Is it an opportunity? That's what I'm asking, to just expand on that, to get an update on the climate change programme. Just a thought.
As always, I'm a servant of this committee. Rob, do you think that this is an appropriate? I'm not sure where you've got in terms of bedding in and.
I don't think it's a problem bringing an update on that, the theme to the commission. I think, is Steve James bringing inspiring communities as one of our other themes there? So my only question would be, if the commission is focusing, the sort of themes of the corporate plan, if the next meeting's about inspiring communities, maybe you'd like the one after the next one to be about the environment and climate change agenda, or whether you're happy to have them both side by side at the meeting. But in terms of, can we feel the officers to give that update? Of course. Yeah.
I mean, I think the committee can handle 2 themes at once, but yeah, okay. In which case, yes, could we have an update from the climate change officer as well? Any other members with any other points? Seeing none, thank you very much. Which takes us to, I think last time I tried to end the meeting before doing the last date, didn't I? But I just checked there isn't another item before then. I don't think there is. Oh, yes. Well, so with your indulgence, we approved the minutes without any amendments. So I don't intend to go below the line unless members have a pressing issue on that. So that's fine then, in which case date of the next meeting is as written, the 28th of October. And I thank you all for coming, and once again, very good meeting, and see you next time.